I won't let you hurt my friend. Go ahead and try and hit me if you're able. Can't you see the relationship is stable? I know you think I'm not something you're afraid of, 'cause you think that you see what I'm made of. But I am even more than the two of them. Everything they care about is what I have. I am their fury, I am their patience, I am a conversation. I am made
when you're weary, feeling small, when tears are in your eyes. dry them all. I'm on your side. Oh, when times get rough and friends just can't be found, like a bridge over troubled water, I will lay me down like a bridge over troubled water. I will lay me down. When you're down and out, when you're on the street, when evening falls so hard, I will comfort you. I'll take your part. Oh, when darkness comes and pain is all around, like a bridge over troubled water, I will lay me down like a bridge over troubled water. I will lay me down. Sail on, silver girl, sail on by. Your time has come to shine. All your dreams are on their way. See how they shine. Oh, if you need a friend, I'm sailing right behind, like a bridge over troubled water. I will ease your mind, like a bridge over troubled water. I will ease your mind.
Hey everybody, I hope you enjoyed that. If you'd like to see more, make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you next time. I'll see you next time.
Oh, shoot! I'm sorry, human. I don't like you the way you like me. Romantically, I mean. I tried very hard to. I thought that because you flirted with me, that I was supposed to go on a date with you. Then, on the date, feelings would blossom forth. I would be able to match your passion for me. But alas, I, the great Papyrus, have failed. I feel just the same as before, and instead, by dating you, I've only drawn you deeper into your intense love for me. A dark prison of passion with no escape. How could I have done this to my dear friend? No, wait! That's wrong! I can't fail at anything, human! I help you through these trying times. I'll keep being your cool friend and act like this never happened. After all, you are very great. It would be tragic to lose your friendship. So please, don't cry because I won't kiss you. Because I don't even have lips. And hey, someday you'll find someone as great as me. Well, no, that's not true. But how'd you settle for a second best?
Even though he means well and thinks he hasn't failed, he has. He has failed you. You feel as if your heart has been ripped out of your chest. You fell from him the moment you ran into him. After Sans asked you to play along with him, he was so cute, thinking he'd capture you with his stupid puzzles. Then he fought you and you needed a way to escape without hurting him. You tried to explain yourself to him and you couldn't stop yourself. You confessed your true feelings for him and actually agreed. You couldn't believe it at first. You had only just met and he was going to hand you over to the Royal Guard. And now he was agreeing to go on a date with you instead, but sadly, it was all too good to be true. During the date, Papyrus didn't understand what was happening, and he told you he didn't feel the same way. Now you feel alone. You've left Toriel, and now it seems that Papyrus have left you. Though he says you still be friends, you can't help but feel lost and scared, alone in Papyrus's room. You realize you've been sitting here, alone in Papyrus' room, thinking to yourself for a while now. You shouldn't be here anymore. You get up and walk out the door. No one else seems to be in the house, so you quietly walk out into Snowden unnoticed. What can you do now? Papyrus and Sans are gone. You once again have no one. You are all alone. Stand there a moment, lost. While pondering what to do next, you notice that next to Papyrus's house is a small garage. The door seems to be open just a crack, and no longer wanting to continue on your quest, you decide to investigate. You push on the door, and it opens without resistance. It is dark and cold inside the small garage. There's also a small dog bed and a small dog bowl in one of the corners of the room. Did Papyrus have a dog? This room was much too small to keep any living being in. You also find a crumpled note on the floor. You pick it up and read it. It says,
Human, please do not try to escape, for you cannot. I, the great Papyrus, have captured you, and now will become the head of the Royal Guard once I hand you over.
Papyrus? This is where he was planning on keeping you? In this old dirty box? He just wanted to use you. You thought he cared about you. He said you would still be friends. You feel lost and alone. You're a human. No one likes you here. You're trapped with nowhere to go. Despair and fear set in. You have to get out of here. You don't have anywhere to go, but you can't be here anymore. You run out of the garage, too scared and ashamed at yourself to find Papyrus for help. You run and run, not knowing where you are going and not even caring. You reach a cave and stumble inside. You lean against the rock wall, trying to catch your breath. You're out of energy and need some rest. You slide down the wall and fall to the ground. You lay there until you eventually fall asleep. Hey, buddy. Are you alright? You feel tough, thick fingers brush across your forehead. You slowly open your eyes and see Sans looking down at you worriedly. I saw you run in here while I was selling hot dogs. What happened? What's wrong? You don't want to tell him. You need him to feel like you have the energy to do so. Why does he care anyways? You're just some stupid lost human. I'm fine. You managed to spit out, turning away from him. How did the fight with my bro go? Did you go in the garage? The door was left open. You don't say anything and keep your back facing him. He sits down next to you and hugs you. It's alright. I know you must feel scared and alone. You aren't alone though. My brother and I will always be here for you. You shift out of his hug. No, you won't. Papyrus already left me and soon you will too. You still don't turn to face him. Is that what happening? You sigh. Is that what happened? You sigh. You just have to explain all this to him, you suppose. You tell him everything about your fight with Papyrus, the date after, and what you found in the garage. You leave out the part about your feelings towards Papyrus. My brother knows a lot about puzzles and word searches, but he doesn't know much about humans, relationships, or, well, feelings. He didn't mean to hurt you. He only wanted to be accepted, and now he's given that up for you. Because he sees you as a friend. I guess you could say he cares for you, huh? He's right. You understand now. Papyrus didn't mean to hurt you. He didn't know what he was doing. He gave up his dreams in order to save you because he cares about you. You feel your heart swell as you listen to Sans. You don't know how you didn't realize it. Papyrus gave away everything he ever wanted for you. Yet he only sees you as a friend. That's the part you wish wasn't true. You turn around to face Sans and nod at him. Ah, there's that pretty face. So you see, my big goofy bro is just trying his best. You nod again and hug Sans. He wraps his arms around you and pulls you close. It's just, I wish Papyrus understood. You trail off, not sure how to tell Sans your feelings for his brother. I know how you feel about him. He does? How? You do? How do you know? I see the way you look at him. It's the same way I look at you. Did he just... Sans, what are you talking about? He turns away from you nervously, not sure what to say. I guess you could say I've a boner for you. He smiles his usual goofy smile and shrugs his shoulders. You can't help it. You giggle at his stupid joke. He's so sweet. You've always had kind of a thing for him, but you never knew he felt this way about you. Sans, you're so cute. I guess you could say I feel the same way. You say, smiling, your body still close to him. Son, you feel his body slowly moving, pulsing almost as if it was flowing with energy. Sans, are you okay? You ask as you slowly look up at him. What looks like thin blue fire lightly forms around him. Don't worry, this is my power. It allows me to feel something my brother can do. What was he talking about? You don't know what's going on, and he looks dangerous despite his statement. You strike against his grip and he lets his arm fall to your sides. What are you talking about? You never knew Sans had powers. Papyrus didn't return your feelings for him because he doesn't have feelings. He lacks the ability to feel. With my powers, I can feel. That's why Papyrus didn't return your feelings. Because he can't feel. But Sans can, so he has feelings for you? All of this confusing information was making your head hurt. I can feel how you feel for him. I can feel my feelings for you. I can feel you. He carefully puts his arms around you again, slowly allowing you plenty of time to push away. Wanting to learn more about Sans and his powers, you let him. I know how you must have felt with Papyrus. I feel the same way about you. I want to show you how I feel about you. He looks up at you. His pupils are gone. All that's left is darkness. Suddenly, one shining, glowing eye appears in one of his empty eye sockets and stares directly at you. His one glowing eye, paired with the darkness of his empty eye socket, is terrifying, but at the same time also mesmerizing and sexy, as it pierces through you. He says all of this calmly and slowly while his glowing eye slices through you. He lets go of you, slowly runs his thick fingers up and down your body. They are humming with energy and send chills through you. He then presses his skull against your face, his energy-forming lips that slowly and tenderly kiss you. He moves down to your neck, where his energy forms a soft, wet tongue that licks your neck as he wraps his arms around you once again. You moan quietly, loving the soft, buzzing feeling of his energy. His lips smile against your neck and he pulls you on top of him, so that you're sitting on his lap. Sense slowly pulls off your shorts and underwear, leaving your bottom half bare. He slides his fingers across your legs. The roughness of his bones, mixed with the flow of his energy, make you itch for more. He starts slowly massaging your thighs, moving closer and closer between your legs. His teasing is excruciating. You don't want to wait anymore. In order to speed up the process, you open your legs fully for him. You want more. He smiles as he says this, his energy buzzing all around him. He then slowly pushes one finger into you. You feel his thick and hard finger bone enter you, as his energy around it pulses and massages you inside. You call out, not expecting the sensation Sans is giving you. You like this? His eye grows brighter with anticipation. He's enjoying this way too much. He slowly slides his hard finger in and out of you, the energy around it moving with it. His energy dances in and out of you, buzzing and massaging every crevice. Yeah, yes, I like it. You can barely manage to form the words while Sans sends all these feelings through you. He inserts another finger into you and moves them in unison. He twirls his fingers around slowly and twists and curls them, his bones pounding into you while his energy runs through you. Yes! You yell as you throw your head back in pleasure. Sans suddenly stops and pulls his finger out of you. Can I feel you? Sans mumbles, his whole body buzzing from the energy. You nod in response and he quickly takes off his shorts and underwear. His energy leaves the rest of his body and moves to his crotch, where it forms a thick, erect penis. You breathe in sharply at the sight of it. Sans pulls you close as he slowly slides himself into you. His hard energy moves around inside you, running along your walls and massaging into you. Oh, Sans! You yell and Sans moans too. Feeling your walls tighten around him, he begins moving himself in and out of you, slowly at first, but then speeds up, pounding his energy inside you. The energy explodes with each thrust, sending shockwaves through your body. You feel yourself nearing the edge as your whole body throbs with his energy. Yeah, I'm gonna... With one final thrust of buzzing power, Sans empties his energy into you. It fires out rapidly, each burst exploding into you and massaging your entire body. It sends you over, and your walls close around Sans, convulsing with pleasure. Sans exclaims and pulls you close. Once you're finished, you slide off Sans and lay on the floor. Out of energy, having used all of his energy on you, Sans also lies next to you. He wraps his arm around you and pulls you close. Now, how was that? He asked, breathing heavy. That was amazing. You managed to respond in between quick, short breaths, your head swimming. I never knew you wanted to bone me. He turns to you, smiling as he softly brushes his hand against your face. Good one, Sans. You giggle at his silly joke and smile at his touch. Perhaps we could try this with Papyrus. Sans smirks at you and you feel the blood rushing to your cheeks. You want to ask him what he was implying, but he has already fallen asleep. Feeling pretty tired too, you cuddle close to him and fall asleep as well.
Unexpected by Kaze Fiend, Part 1. Sometimes unexpected things happen. Frisk had gained a little weight. It caused no alarm in the beginning. They were growing accustomed to the surface life once again, eating a lot of different things, showing Sans all of the food that was unavailable in the underground. They had simply begun overeating. Frisk would start going for a jog every other day. No problem. They felt a little sick from time to time. Again, this caused no major alarm. The stress of helping humans and monsters cooperate was immense sometimes. Both parties were quite stubborn in some regards, but steps had been made towards a brighter future. They would feel better soon. The alarm bells rang in the distant corner of their mind when they were suspiciously light. Frisk silenced them. Sometimes cycles were different. Sure, they'd gotten lighter than usual, perhaps from stress again. Periods could be finicky beasts. They ignored it for a month. And another. And another. Frisk was now full-blown late. Their menstrual cycle was completely absent. The alarm they had tried so desperately to silence was now ringing full blast in their head, making them dizzy. On a sleepy Sunday, they sat alone in the bathroom, leaning against the toilet. The immediate feeling of nausea and dizziness had woken them up. Luckily, this was early enough that Sans would never be awake. Not for a few hours, at least. They had time to figure this out. Crimson eyes filled with all sorts of confusion and panic, counting days, remembering months. They had been light for 3 months and late for 1. Frisk couldn't be pregnant. It was an absolute impossibility. Sans wasn't human. He was made of magic. They couldn't procreate. Frisk stripped themselves of their nightshirt and stared at the reflection in the full-length mirror that hung from the bathroom door. They had gotten slightly thicker. That couldn't be the beginnings of a baby bump. Not even possible. How? Of course, they didn't have a test in the house. Why would they even think to keep one around? This was impossible. Would a test even work? Hopefully. The hormonal changes would hopefully be the same. More panic. They slowly set their hand over the small bump. Slender fingers traced around it. Frisk couldn't be seen going to get a pregnancy test. Most humans and monsters knew who they were. Knew it was impossible for a monster to get a human pregnant. The rumors of infidelity would reach Sans. Gossip would break his heart. Would Sans think that Frisk was unfaithful? Would he hate them? A tear rolled down their cheek. They had to be sure before they told him. They needed the truth to smack them in the face before they even believed it. Slowly creeping back into their room, they hunted down some clothing. The only thing open this early on a Sunday was a small 24-hour convenience store several blocks from their current abode. Donning a pair of sunglasses and their hair up in a bun, they slipped out of the house unnoticed. The store was empty, much to Frisk's relief. The only thing they had to worry about was the red-headed human cashier who leaned sleepily on the counter, lazily scrolling through her phone, a cheap-sounding pop song humming through its speakers. She didn't look like she cared too much about what was going on around her, only acknowledging Frisk with a nod and a yawn. Frisk was on a mission, hunting through the aisles of small odds and ends until they found the small section with random bits and pieces for sexual health. Condoms, pregnancy tests, feminine products, and the like. Scanning over the packages, Frisk decided on the most reliable-looking one and briskly walked to the counter. The cashier raised an eyebrow, green eyes glancing over Frisk once or twice before scanning the item. "I ain't no judge," she shrugged as Frisk hastily put the money in her hand, grabbing the item and leaving before they could get their change. The girl shrugged and returned to her phone. Home was still quiet. Frisk peered into their bedroom. A sigh of relief escaped their lips and they returned to the bathroom, closing the door quietly. 2 lines is yes, 1 is no. Waiting. The waiting would kill them. To pass the time, they pondered how they were going to hide the package. If this was all for nothing, they couldn't leave it out in the open, not wanting to plant even a seed of doubt in Sand's head. They would never be unfaithful. They loved him with all their heart and soul. No human or monster could ever pry them away, not even death itself. Enough time had passed. Frisk almost didn't want to look. What if they were just being stupid? What if there was another, more reasonable explanation for all this? They would look like a complete idiot, feel like a complete idiot. Taking a deep breath, they picked it up, hands shaking. 2. There were 2 lines. Frisk couldn't breathe. All logic and reason was gone. This didn't make sense. This was impossible. How in the world could they possibly get pregnant? What were they going to do? What would happen to them? Could a child even survive? They cried, quietly sobbing into a towel. Fear. They were so afraid. They had to tell Sans. They couldn't hide it. If they were in fact 4 months pregnant, they would start to show soon. Had Sans noticed the bump? Did he just not think anything of it? Frisk splashed their face with cold water. They needed to gather their resolve, their courage. They had to do this now. It was too late to go back, too late to change anything now. This was happening. They were going to have a baby. They tiptoed into the bedroom and approached their sleeping skeletal husband. Words caught in their throat as nerves held them back. Maybe they could wait until a better time, go make breakfast or go clear their head. As they turned to leave, his hand caught their wrist. "Where were you, sweetheart?" By the looks of it, he hadn't been awake for long, but long enough to notice Frisk had been missing for a while. "Sans?" Frisk bit down on their bottom lip, unsure how to proceed. A deep breath. Inhale and exhale. Now or never. They slowly knelt onto the bed beside him. Rather than using words, they took his hand and placed it over the slightly defined bump. "It's yours." Part 2. It was there. This was real. Sans could feel something under his bony hand. When Frisk straightened their back, it protruded a small amount, noticeable if you really looked. It was a little firmer than the rest of their body. A slight flush of red colored his cheeks. Sans' large hand lovingly held the spot where, tucked safely in Frisk's womb, a child slept. His child. A wonderful, seemingly impossible child. Something intangible that would be part of him and part of the person he loved so dearly. Frisk sat there, eyes closed, taking deep breaths. They removed his hand from their bump and laced their fingers through his. "I'm so scared," they breathed. Their voice snapped Sans out of his trance. "Sweetheart, I don't understand how." Clumsily rushed words poured from his mouth. "I mean," he paused, collecting his thoughts. "How far?" 3 or 4 months? Frisk's voice cracked, grip on his hand tightening. "Please believe me, Sans. I would never cheat on you." Frisk. Sans interrupted as he sat upright, his other hand brushing the hair out of their face. Sweetheart, I know that. I might not understand how, but I believe you. He flashed them a sweet smile. He was much calmer than Frisk had anticipated. It was almost an eerie calm. Tears now freely rolled down their cheeks, but they smiled. Oh, Sans. Frisk let go of his hand and wrapped their arms firmly around him, burying their head in his shoulder. I love you so much. I love you too. Sans' arms held Frisk tightly, hand gently rubbing their back. The morning melted into late afternoon. Frisk had napped most of the day, slowly fading in and out of sleep. Sans wasn't too bothered. The nausea from early that morning seemed to come back in waves throughout the day. Whoever had called it morning sickness clearly had lied to females everywhere. They hadn't spoken much about what to do next, the shock of everything still making them both a little numb, both expressing the utmost confusion with how this could have possibly happened. What was known, or assumed as all knowledge was now thrown into question, was that humans and monsters were entirely too different to be compatible. Humans were physical and were blessed with determination, while monsters were magical and their bodies were very closely tied to their soul. Sans, albeit rather crudely, had brought up that they slept together numerous times before. What had changed? What went differently? It had to have happened on one of the first nights they spent together on the surface. Frisk wasn't covered in hundreds of buttercups. They were more relaxed, calmer. The last possibility was that the human-monster conception was incredibly difficult, and not outright impossible as previously thought. For them, Lady Luck had rolled the dice in favor of creating a new life. The subject of going to see Alphys was brought up. No. His voice was stern with a hint of fear. She would experiment on you. The fear now more prevalent. I don't know what I would do if... The connotation of his words hung thick in the air. He laid beside Frisk, who had snuggled themselves back into bed. Sans' hand gently caressed their baby bump. The gentle motion did seem to assist with Frisk's sickness. Frisk and Sans agreed to keep the pregnancy a secret for as long as they could. At the very least, until they found out more details. How far along Frisk was for certain and what exactly they were dealing with. The uncomfortable question of what the baby looked like weighed deeply on their minds. The more important question of if the child was currently healthy had to be the top concern. Frisk needed to see a doctor that would agree to see them after hours. The following day was filled with phone calls. Many clinics outright refused. The reactions varied between skeptical of how serious Frisk was to outright refusal to even speak to them further. It was heartbreaking. Their emotions and hormones got the better of them once or twice, violently swapping between rage and sadness. The mood swings were often so fast it terrified Sans. Frisk had shouted at him once or twice for seemingly no reason. He quickly found out Frisk could be pacified with a glass of milk or bowl of cereal. Which was odd. Frisk wasn't particularly obsessed with either food before. After many hours, Frisk had finally found a clinic that agreed to see them in the night immediately. The call was filled with giggles and a strange excitement. Sans asked about it but was met with secrecy. He would have to see when they got there. Night sky sparsely dotted with stars and a cold spring wind in the air. It was a nice night. The pair decided to walk to their secret meeting. Well, Sans objected in concern for Frisk's condition, but was assured that a walk was not going to break them. Fingers laced together, Frisk back in the large coat they had worn so much before coming to the surface. Streets were mostly empty. They saw the odd car here and there and a human cyclist who gave Sans a double take, obviously still adjusting to seeing monsters walking around. Sans flashed them a toothy grin, partly to be an ass and scare them. This resulted in a playful elbow to the ribs. The clinic was its own building, possibly independently owned as opposed to being a large office building with multiple doctors. In front of the building was a peculiar sight. Frisk's face lit up while Sans managed a confused expression. A bipedal dog in a pale pink sundress and a green cardigan. She didn't look much like the dogs from Snowdon. Sans didn't recognize her. Deep copper fur and floppy ears. Tail wagging so out of control that Sans figured it would break off at any moment. The dog sniffed the air and turned to look at them. An excited bark escaped her muzzle. "Human! Human! Come, come! Over here!" She beckoned, one paw holding a large keyring. "Doctor was running late, so he told me to let you in." She unlocked the door and ushered them inside the building. "I'm Chienna! Please sit over here!" "Thank you," Frisk replied, and walked into the building, Sans following right behind her. It was your typical medical facility. A large front desk, various computers and printers all lined up next to neat stacks of paper. The waiting room was painted with soft pink and blue stripes, some scattered toys in a corner and a myriad of chairs. One wall completely covered with photos and cards that Sans only gave a passing glance. He was beginning to become exasperated with the high energy of the dog and sat himself down in a comfortable-looking seat. Frisk stood at the desk while Chienna rummaged through files and papers. Oh, here we are! Mama Human, I need you to fill out some paperwork!" The volume of her voice was excessive, but Frisk didn't seem to mind. "We have no records of you because, oh my gosh, it's your first time here!" "Thank you," Frisk smiled, grabbing a pen that was sitting on the desk and began to fill out various questions. Some were normal. Is this your first child? Do you drink or smoke? And some got oddly specific. How often are you sexually active? Frisk had to really think about it, absently counting on their fingers. They looked behind them at Sans, who had to put a palm to his face as the dog woman continued to talk. Chienna suddenly popped up beside Frisk, her loud voice now hushed to a whisper. Can I pet the baby?" Her paw hovering closer to Frisk's baby bump. "Dr. Pierce told me to ask and not to pet, but can I pet?" Frisk nodded and grasped the approaching paw lightly in her hand. "Of course." Placing it gently on the bump, other hand giving Chienna a delicate pat on the head. She gasped, tail once again wagging itself into a blur. "You pet me? Oh my goodness, pets!" Giggles and happy yelps filled the quiet office. "Sorry I'm late." A tall graying man entered the office. He lightly carried a yawning toddler in a pink onesie, setting her gently beside Sans. "It was my weekend with my daughter. I had forgotten." "Doctor!" Chienna's large brown eyes sparkled. "This is Mama Dreamer and Papa Skeleton!" She excitedly pointed her paws towards them. Sans quickly rose to his feet, towering over the other man, red eyes looking him over but saying nothing. "Hello, sir and madam." The doctor smiled softly and extended his hand towards Sans. "I am Dr. Pierce, and I am so very glad you have chosen to come see me about such a unique situation. I look forward to working with you." Sans firmly shook his hand. "Yes, hey." "Thank you so much for doing this." Frisk bowed their head. "Your receptionist was so delightful on the phone. I felt that because she was a monster, she would be easier to talk to." "Madam Dreamer, I will do everything to help you and your husband on this joyous occasion." Pierce placed both hands on Frisk's shoulders. "Your situation is a miracle. We're going to start with a couple of standard procedures. If you would leave your coat with your husband and follow me for a moment, we can get started." "I'm coming too," Sans protested, throwing the doctor a glare. "I assure you, sir," he started, "it's simple things like taking height and weight and some more questions. I'll call you when it's time to see the baby." "Sans, it's okay," Frisk reassured and handed him the coat. He leaned down and gave them a quick, toothy kiss before grumpily sitting back down beside the drowsy toddler. Chienna leaned over and whispered something in Pierce's ear. He chuckled and nodded. "I'll take you on that bet." Sans watched as Frisk, the doctor, and the receptionist disappeared down the dark hallway into a room at the end. Sans was alone. Well, mostly. He glanced down beside him to see 2 expressive blue eyes and a mop of blonde curls. "Hey there, kid." He smiled, trying to be as not scary as he could. "Cassie," the girl grinned, one of her front teeth missing. She looked to be no older than 4 years old. "Sans," he replied, unsure what the child wanted with him. "Sans," she repeated incorrectly, and jumped off the chair and stumbled her way to the pile of toys, sorting through them before choosing a stuffed cat and bringing it over to Sans. "Meow, meow." Sans chuckled. "That's a pretty nice kitty you got there, princess." Cassie smiled and began to unsuccessfully climb onto Sans' lap. The fact that she wasn't terrified of a giant skeleton impressed him. Sans could see how it would be easier for dog and rabbit monsters to fit in. He had frightened a small child once or twice while grocery shopping. Gently he reached down and picked her up, setting Cassie in his lap. She tugged at his sweater and pointed to the previously ignored wall of pictures. "What's this?" Sans glanced over. Many pictures of human children, exhausted-looking mothers in hospital gowns, a few graduation photos. Cards expressing gratitude for safely delivering their children or helping them through medical issues. It put Sans a little more at ease. This man might know what he's doing. A white folded piece of paper pinned to the wall caught his eye. He leaned closer to make out the light cursive it was written in. "Thank you for trying." For trying? The realization hit him and he nervously gripped the arm of the chair, digging his fingers into the wood. Sometimes children didn't make it. The small child in his lap looked up at him curiously. Anxiety and fear hit him too hard to notice her attention. He was afraid. He had to play calm for Frisk's sake. He didn't want them to stress or worry about what he felt. He was so afraid. What if something happened to Frisk? To the child? Sans almost didn't even notice the dog receptionist scamper her way over to him. "Papa, they're ready for you now. Aren't you excited? I will take the human puppy from you." The shrill sound of her overexcited voice snapped him back to reality, and he slowly handed the doctor's child over to the dog woman. "Bye-bye, Sans," the girl yawned, as Sans entered the room he had seen Frisk go into. Frisk waved at him from a strange bed they were sitting up in, their midsection exposed, Doctor plucking something into the machine beside them. Sans quickly closed the gap and was at Frisk's side. "Okay, we're all good to go to see what's going on in there." The doctor grabbed a small bottle of gel and squeezed a clear substance onto the bump. The cold sensation caused Frisk to shudder and grip Sans' hand. His eyes darted over angrily. "Did that hurt them?" "No, Sans, it was just cold." Frisk's chuckle caused his expression to soften, looking at them and smiling. Neither of them noticed the doctor roll a small piece of equipment where he had poured the gel. "Hey, Mom and Dad, we're going to get a picture soon." Both looked at the small screen as he hit a few keys and turned some dials. A strange black and white picture started to appear, looking like strange circles of black. More movement, a darker circle. "Well, I'll be damned. I lost a bet." Dr. Pierce moved over the spot again, other hand pointing to the screen. "See that?" 2 reasonably well-defined shapes in the mess of gray and black. "It is twins. They look normal and healthy." Unexpected by Kaze Fiend. Part 3. Heartbeats. The twins were developing normally. Frisk's initial guess had been correct. They were indeed 4 months pregnant. Just a few short weeks from being able to feel their movements. Frisk didn't show as much as other women carrying twins. The doctor speculated that they were carrying the children closer to their back. A possible reason was that Frisk's abdominal muscles were tighter due to this being their first pregnancy. It wasn't going to cause complications. The children would move to where they needed to be. So much information that Sans couldn't really grasp it all. Suddenly finding himself responsible for 2 small lives instead of the perceived single life. 3 lives if you counted Frisk. He glanced down at them. He only now noticed a glow on their face. Their previous worries had washed away, replaced by a serene tranquility. Their children were healthy and appeared human. Would they be like him at all? How could they not be? It was frustrating for Sans to think about. So much he couldn't really understand about the situation. Frisk seemed happy, one hand on their bump and their other hand's fingers delicately laced through Sans. They discussed future appointments being more frequent than a normal pregnancy, some specific dietary plans, and perhaps consulting a monster. If Frisk was happy, that was all that mattered. Sans glanced around the room. On an old rocking chair in the corner, the small blonde girl slept in the arms of the dog woman. It was past midnight, and understandable that a toddler would be dead tired by this time. Still, he felt a little bad he wouldn't be able to say goodbye. Hopefully next time. Many books, pamphlets, and forms were loaded into a cute baby bottle patterned tote bag. The item Frisk was enamored most with was the black and white printout of the ultrasound that the doctor had kindly laminated. It was the first picture of their children. Dr. Pierce had outlined the children with a white pen. To the untrained eye, they could appear simply as indistinguishable blotches. Unfortunately, one of the children was not facing the right direction to be able to determine its gender. For certain, they knew they were having at least one daughter. After thanking Dr. Pierce and Chiana for their time, Frisk and Sans took their leave. Due to how late it was and his newly kick-started overprotective instinct, Sans insisted on giving Frisk a piggyback ride home. Draped in his large coat, Frisk yawned. Twins. Their gaze locked on the grayscale photo while resting their head on his shoulder. Sans was slightly lost in thought, the absolute surrealness of the situation hitting him all at once. Frisk gently nudged him, prompting a response. "Damn shame we didn't get to see Sweet Pea's womb mate," he replied. He for sure had a daughter. His Sweet Pea, a pet name he decided the moment he saw the gray picture. Frisk giggled at the terrible pun, then smiled. "You're already calling her Sweet Pea?" Sans shrugged, a flush of red across his cheekbones. "Just a cute nickname." "It's perfect." Frisk reassured him with a few quick kisses on his skull. "We do still need to think of their names, but we have time." Frisk fell asleep almost instantly. Sans was more uneasy. The minutes turned into silent hours of just thinking. Would he even be a good parent? The cruel voice of inadequacy and anxiety in the back of his head sure didn't think so. Cruel mocking he attempted to quiet. How could he do this to Frisk? What if they didn't survive this? If Frisk died, his children would surely resent him forever. If by some unthinkable, but entirely possible in this delicate situation, outcome the children didn't make it, could they both be whole again? Of course, Frisk would be the most excellent mother. Sans knew his calm facade had helped them come to terms with the pregnancy, fear being replaced with anticipation. He had to keep them smiling and happy. deal with his concerns and fears by himself. He had a moment to flip through the pamphlet Frisk had set on the bedside table and read that unnecessary stress was bad for an expecting mother. Frisk shifted in their sleep, rolling onto their back, one arm by their face and the other across their stomach. Slow rise and fall of their chest, the odd twitch of their fingers. Sometimes sleepy mumbles escaped their lips. Sans carefully pulled down their nightshirt, which had ridden up, exposing their underwear, and pulled the comforter over them. Although their room was warm, he had to make sure they didn't catch a chill. How in the world did Sans not notice? He realized now that they were more plush in their midsection, and just 2 days earlier they had been intimate. He really hadn't noticed that their soul had some of his magic in it? Or noticed the now obvious bump where his children were? Was he that bad of a husband? No. Again quieting those thoughts of self-hatred. Skeletal fingers absent-mindedly touching his necklace. Every young monster found out sooner or later from their parents, teachers, or friends where children came from. The thing troubling him most was the why. Well, the why and the how seemed to go hand in hand. Human bodies were so amazing. Frisk was so petite compared to him, and they were growing 2 entirely new lives inside them, even with Frisk having such little magic of their own. Finally giving in to fatigue, Sans wrapped an arm around his sleeping wife, pulling Frisk close, being ever so careful to not wake them, resting his skull on their shoulder after giving their cheek a toothy kiss.
Sans, do you do this to purposefully anger me?
Papyrus angrily motioned to the sock that had been placed on the floor of his living room.
I'd say I'm pretty successful at pushing your buttons,
Sans chuckled, lazily lounging on his brother's couch.
Do you not have your own house to befoul? Or has your Frisk wife kicked you out for being so hopelessly disgusting?
Papyrus rolled his eyes exaggeratedly. Sans had been here for a few minutes and had already managed to exasperate him.
What? I can't visit my favorite brother?
Sans feigned despair.
That hurts, bro. You wound me.
Papyrus sighed, picking up the discarded sock.
You want something. I know you better than that. Do you wish to bask in my greatness? Do you miss me?
Actually... Sans paused to scratch the back of his skull, hunting for the proper words.
I have to tell you something pretty important, Pap.
Well, get on with it! Papyrus crossed his arms, drumming his fingers impatiently on his humerus.
I don't have the luxury of standing around being a fool all day.
Frisk is pregnant, Sans sighed, then looked up at Papyrus with a crooked smile. The words hung in the air for a moment. Papyrus processed what was said, then spoke.
Frisk is what?
It was understandable. This was so strange and unheard of. Sans chuckled.
It's hard to believe, but... No, like, actually what?
Papyrus interrupted, a confused and irritated expression on his face.
What does that mean?
Sans narrowed his eye sockets, not initially believing Papyrus was serious.
I don't know how to make it clearer than that, bro. Frisk is, expecting. That doesn't help me at all, Sans.
Papyrus was serious.
Is this some kind of stupid riddle?
Sans struggled to find the words. Did Papyrus really need a clearer picture?
Okay, so, shit, how do I...
A bead of sweat trickled down his skull.
So...
He took a breath.
Pregnant is... It means that inside Frisk right now, there are children that are... mine. Of course, the one thing you would excel at would be procreation.
Papyrus, finally getting it, threw his arms in the air wildly.
You couldn't be a good sentry, no! Spawning another you is what you're good at. I don't believe this.
Sans burst out laughing. If we want to get technical, I spawned 2 more of me. Papyrus put his face in his hand.
This is what you decide to overachieve at? Why do you think this would make me happy to hear? More of you two to torment me? Gee, how fantastic!
His expression betrayed him, his eyes watching Sans with intense curiosity.
When is their incubation complete?
Sans grinned. His relationship with his brother wasn't perfect, but it was much better than it used to be. I think 4 or 5 months?
Good. Their prolonged development means I have the time to make the necessary plans.
Papyrus began pacing back and forth, one hand on his chin. Plans for what? Sans was almost too worried to find out.
Their battle training, of course.
Papyrus looked entirely too proud of himself.
Someone has to. You are much too soft, and as their father will teach them non-combat lessons. They are blessed to have an uncle as great as I, and will be an unstoppable force.
Sans put his head in his hands. While glad that Papyrus was obviously excited, he would definitely have to find a way to curb his brother's enthusiasm once the twins were born. Spring rain pitter-pattered against the windows, rivers forming in the gutters of the street. Frisk sat in the window seat of their living room, resting on soft red pillows and wrapped in a black damask print blanket. A pregnancy book clutched in their hand, absorbing as much information as they could. The whistle of the kettle coming from the kitchen roused them from their comfortable pillow nest. Frisk threw a couple of bags of golden flower tea into the clear glass teapot and poured the boiling water in. The kitchen table was set with teacups, a creamer and sugar bowl. A soft knock at the door. Frisk shouted from the kitchen that they should come in. The door opened slowly. A large imposing goat monster closed her umbrella before ducking through the door into the porch. "My child?" she called out. Frisk poked their head out of the kitchen. "I'm here, Mom." They noted the absence of Asgore. "Oh, was Dad busy?" Toriel softly shrugged. "Unfortunately, he had some business to attend to with a human delegate, but he sends his love." She neatly hung her raincoat and umbrella on the rack by the door and shook some of the stray raindrops from her snowy fur. Frisk carried the teapot from the kitchen and set it on the table before moving to tightly embrace Toriel. "It's been too long." "I know, my dear." She gently patted Frisk's head. "It's a busy job helping your father with diplomacy." Frisk took Toriel's hand and led her to the table, pulling a seat out for her monster mother, pouring her a cup of tea before returning to the kitchen to grab a plate of cinnamon oatmeal cookies. "Oh goodness, what's the occasion?" Toriel asked, noticing that the table was beautifully laid out, watching as the cookie plate was set beside her. "What has that skeleton done now?" Toriel raised an eyebrow. She liked Sans, but was also not above giving him a hard time when she could. Frisk disappeared into the kitchen, Toriel watching curiously as they grabbed something being held by a magnet on the refrigerator. A laminated card? They held it close to their chest. A lovely smile graced their face. "Mom?" Frisk paused to set this was impossible,